All right. So that is what people did in prehistory, and because of those reasons, we're not using HTTP auth these days. It's too inconvenient for all these reasons. Instead, we'd like to customize it for every user. We'd like to have a username and a password for every user, and then we'd like to customize the web page. The idea of an account. The web page looks, is customized for that specific user. So we no longer want to have one group of users with the same password. All right. So the way to do this today is via session tokens. The idea is that every time you log into a server, you get a temporary identifier. Usually it's random, or it could be some cryptographic, value that's computed in various ways. The point is that an attacker should not be able to guess it, because if the attacker can guess it, they could log in as you. So here's how it works with session tokens. Let's say that the user is browsing, and they go to the index, they request the index page from a website, which is usually the first page where you see the home page. So the browser does a GET request for the user. The website says, okay, I haven't interacted with, I don't know who this user is, but I'm going to assign them a session token, an anonymous session token, because the user hasn't logged in yet. But this session token is still useful. For example, the website could put this session token in the cookie, and it's still useful because maybe the user sets a language, right? And they want to have that language preference for the whole session. So you still want to reference even an anonymous user. Maybe then the user says get book, books.html. Then the browser sends the anonymous session token into the cookie. So again, the session token was set into the cookie by the web server, and then the browser attaches the cookie. And then is going to do, later, let's say that the user actually wants to log in. So when they log in, they fill in the username and the password. And the website is going to check the credentials of the user. After it checks the credentials of the users, now it knows who the user is, and it's going to elevate the user to a logged-in session token. Okay, so before it was an anonymous session because the user wasn't logged in. Now the website knows much more about the user. It's no longer anonymous. So it's going to give him a new session token, random session token, and it's going to set that into the cookie along with the response. So now the browser will attach that cookie with the new session token on all the requests. For example, if the user does a purchase, then the browser is going to attach this logged in session token. The web server is going to validate it's a correct token. And namely, it really belongs to this specific user, and then it's going to authorize the action if the token is valid, the action of purchasing something using the user's, let's say, credit card. Okay, so this token is going to authenticate the user for a while, for the duration of the session, and then at some point the web server is going to, reset this token and ask the user to re-authenticate themselves. Or in particular, if the user logs out, the web server is going to discard this token. Is it clear, the principle of how we use tokens? And please feel free to also raise your hand on Zoom so I can, so you can ask the question directly orally, or you can ask it on chat to Toby. Is it clear? Does anybody have a question about this, the use of tokens? Is it clear, the idea that you have an anonymous token until you log in, and then you have a session token that's logged in token? Any questions? Please feel free to raise your hand if you have a question.
Christina asked whether this can be used to cause a DDoS attack by flooding the tokens stored at a server.
That's an interesting question. So cause a DDoS attack by flooding the tokens stored at the server. I mean, you are right that the server has to store these tokens. So you are right that if there's so many people that are creating sessions to the server, then the server has to store a ton of these tokens and it could run out of space. Yes, In principle, yes. I think it would also be pretty difficult for the server to, serve that content, although today there are CDNs that serve it for you. So yeah, in principle, it could. The server is actually storing all this, storing state for every request. I don't think it's a lot of work to store a token, given that, they already have to do a few other things like TCP handshake, TCP session, whatnot. But still, it is in principle possible to do a DDoS that way. Yeah. Good question. Any other question? All right. I just want to make sure that people still feel comfortable to raise their hand on Zoom and ask the question directly to me as well, up to what you prefer. Okay. So the question is, all right, so I told you about, the session token being stored in the cookie, but there's really a few options. The one of them is indeed the one of storing the session token in the cookie, but there's at least two